Picture this. It's a sunny day in Cleveland, 2013. You're minding your business, maybe thinking about lunch, when suddenly your neighbor's front door becomes the stage for the most chaotic breakout since Alcatraz. But instead of Clint Eastwood, you've got Amanda Berry screaming for help through a crack in the door like a scene from a horror movie that forgot to end. Welcome to the story of the Cleveland captives, a case that proves your quiet neighbor with the weirdly reinforced porch isn't just eccentric. He might actually be a human-shaped pile of garbage. Today, we're diving into the decade-long disappearance of 3 women, the man who thought he was a mastermind, but was actually just a basement-dwelling coward, and the most satisfying gotcha moment in true crime history. Imagine it's August 2002. Life is relatively simple, but Michelle Knight is having a rough day. She's 21, tiny, standing at just 4'7", and she's hopelessly lost on her way to a custody hearing. Now, usually, being lost in 2002 meant wrestling with a giant paper MapQuest printout that was 40% ink stains and 60% lies. So, when a familiar face pulls up in a beat-up van, it feels like a literal godsend. The man behind the wheel, Ariel Castro. And here's the kicker. He wasn't some shadowy figure lurking in a trench coat. He was the father of her acquaintance. He was a school bus driver. In the hierarchy of people who probably aren't serial kidnappers, the guy who safely transports our nation's children is usually near the top. Castro doesn't just offer her a ride, he offers her a solution. He tells her he has a litter of puppies at his house nearby. Puppies. It is the ultimate Hall of Fame bait. Michelle gets in the van, the doors lock, and the nice guy mask starts to slip. He drives her to 2207 Seymour Avenue, a house that was essentially becoming a suburban black hole. Once inside, the puppies don't exist. There's just a man who had been practicing his normal guy routine for decades, finally deciding to retire the act. You'd think one vanishing act would have the police department turning the city upside down. But apparently, Cleveland was playing a very tragic game of out of sight, out of mind. And unfortunately for Amanda Berry, she was next on the guest list for a house she'd never be allowed to leave. Fast forward 1 year to the day before Amanda's 17th birthday. She's finishing her shift at Burger King, the universal symbol of teenage independence, and smelling like fry oil. She accepts a ride from the same guy because Ariel Castro had that neighborhood dad mask glued on tight. Amanda goes missing, and while the media actually pays attention this time, she is just a few miles away, locked in a room, listening to the search parties go by. It's the kind of irony that makes you want to punch a wall. 2 women down, and Castro is starting to feel invincible. But he wasn't done. He needed a trio to complete his sick collection. In 2004, 14-year-old Gina DeJesus is walking home from school. Here's where the audacity hits 11. Gina was best friends with Castro's own daughter. Ariel didn't just kidnap a stranger, he kidnapped his daughter's best friend. He pulled over, asked where his daughter was, and Gina, bless her heart, trusted the bus driver dad. He took her to the house on Seymour Avenue, and just like that, the trio was complete. You're probably wondering, how does a guy keep 3 grown women in a residential neighborhood for a decade without the mailman noticing something's up? Well, grab your tinfoil hats, because Ariel Castro's house didn't look like a dungeon from the curb. It looked like the home of that one neighbor who definitely owns a circular saw, but never seems to actually fix his porch. But step inside, and you'd realize this wasn't a home. It was a structural manifestation of a clinical migraine. This wasn't your standard DIY project. Castro turned this 2-story house into a residential fortress of suck. He didn't just lock the doors, he installed 4 separate locking systems on every single entrance. Deadbolts, chains, and padlocks, some rigged with alarms. The windows, boarded up from the inside, but he left the curtains hanging so that from the street, it looked like a normal lived-in home. Inside, however, the girls lived in a permanent state of twilight. To prevent any screams from reaching the sidewalk, Castro kept a TV or a radio blaring 24/7. Imagine being trapped in a room, chained to a radiator, and the only thing you hear for 3,000 days is the mind-numbing drone of local news at max volume. But here's the most infuriating part. Castro wasn't a hermit. He was a school bus driver. He was literally entrusted with children every morning while he had 3 young women chained up in his spare bedrooms. He'd come home from work, grab his bass guitar, and head out to play in salsa bands. He'd host BBQs in his backyard, flipping burgers and making small talk, while the women were literally feet away behind reinforced walls. He even had the gall to attend the vigils for the girls he stole. He walked up to Gina's mother, looked her in the eye, and offered his support. Is the kind of hiding in plain sight that makes you want to reach through time and space just to give him a high five in the face with a brick. He even built inner rooms within rooms, hidden spaces behind wardrobes and false walls. He was obsessed with control, creating a labyrinth of misery that he navigated with the smugness of a man who thought he was a mastermind. In reality, he wasn't a genius. He just exploited neighborly politeness to the point of tragedy. But even the most obsessive control freak eventually gets sloppy. You can only play God for so long before the universe decides to hand you your walking papers. On May 6, 2013, the man who spent a decade obsessively checking locks finally messed up. He left the inner door unlocked. It was a crack in the armor, a tiny sliver of hope that was just wide enough for 10 years of desperation to come screaming through. Amanda Berry, who by this point had survived more than most could in 10 lifetimes, sees her shot. She doesn't just knock, she goes full Rambo on the bottom of that door. Enter Charles Ramsey, a neighbor who was just trying to enjoy his McDonald's in peace. He hears the screaming, sees a hand poking through a hole in the door, and thinks, that's not right. He helps her kick the door open, and out pops Amanda Berry with a 6-year-old daughter no one knew existed. The 911 call is legendary. Amanda is screaming, I'm Amanda Berry. I've been kidnapped for 10 years. And the dispatcher is acting like she's calling in a noise complaint. Once the police arrived and realized they weren't dealing with a prank, they stepped inside and found the other 2 women. The nightmare was over, and the era of Ariel Castro's mastermind status was officially cancelled. When the police hauled Castro into an interrogation room, the tough guy facade evaporated. He started making excuses that were so pathetic they belong in the Hall of Shame. He tried to blame his addiction, and even had the nerve to say the women lived in harmony with him. Yeah, okay, Ariel. Nothing says harmony like chains and boarded-up windows. He eventually took a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, sentenced to life plus 1,000 years, but he didn't even last a month in prison before he took the coward's way out in his cell. Good riddance. The real stars here are Michelle, Amanda, and Gina. Michelle Knight stood up in court and told him, "You took 11 years of my life, but I have my life back. I spent 11 years in hell. Now your hell is just beginning." That is the ultimate mic drop. Today, Michelle, Amanda, and Gina are living their lives, writing books, and proving that while monsters are real, they are nowhere near as strong as the human spirit. If you think Ariel Castro got what he deserved, or if you just want to support the incredible resilience of these survivors, hit that like button and subscribe. We dive into the dark corners of the world every week, but we always look for the light at the end of the tunnel. Stay skeptical, stay safe, and maybe check on your neighbors, especially if they're playing their music a little too loud. What case should we cover next? Let me know in the comments below.